Hey, good afternoon, race fans. How is everybody? We are going live on YouTube or on Facebook now. That should kick in. Hello, everyone. How the heck are you? It's good to be back. Good to be here. I hope everyone had an absolutely lovely Thursday. And has had a lovely day so far. So, welcome aboard, everybody. I don't know why the Facebook stream isn't starting, but I apologize if you're over on Facebook waiting for this to get rolling. Wow. I had 4 people waiting, and now I have 1 viewer on YouTube. So, hello, person on YouTube. Oh, well. Let me see if I can get the Facebook stream to work here. Let me fire this off. Hopefully this will get going. I'm using the stream key. Cerulean, good to see you. So anyway, what's going on? Oh yeah, it's Friday. It is Friday, and I am super happy about that. Let me see. Did I forget to click start? I forgot to click start. That's why. There we go. I'm sorry if you're over on Facebook. I thought I had clicked start. Hello, Facebook friends. I'm now streaming to you guys too. My fault. Well, it had been a long time without a major technical screw up on my part, so I figure, why not get one in? Why not have one today? And there it was. So if you're wondering why on Facebook nothing was working, that's why. So anyway, more interesting news from the Jim Ward Deities and Demigods manuscript auction. Now, I had mentioned this goes back a few days. This goes back to, I think, Monday or Tuesday night. Jim Ward, the highly prolific TSR veteran, and I mean, Jim was there across ages of Dungeons and Dragons and decades of work, and has an incredibly impressive, not just in terms of size, but in terms of quality of D&D products. And you got to remember, Jim brought us the first science fiction role-playing game, the first post-apocalypse science fiction role-playing game. Well, Jim found what he thought was his original typed manuscript for Deities and Demigods. And if you're not familiar with that particular work, well, you've been living under a rock D&D wise, because this is Deities and Demigods. This is the Cyclopedia of Gods and Heroes from Myth and Legend. And it actually came after Supplement 4 for original Dungeons and Dragons, also by Jim Ward, with Rob Kuntz. So back in the olden days, of course, you wouldn't just fire up Windows or or even Mac OS or even your Apple or your Commodore 64 and type off a file digitally and send it to someone. You would sit at your typewriter, hammering away. If you made a mistake, you backed up, you took out the correction tape, you stuck it in, and you struck over the letter, or you left it to editors who would come to you and say, hey, what does this mean? What does this have to do with the price of tea in China? So Jim found what he had thought was his original typed manuscript. And I want to be very clear about something. It is a copy of the original manuscript that he had, but it is not the pieces of paper that came out of his typewriter. So he went to TSR after he'd finished it and said, I would like my manuscript back. They gave him what he thought at the time or at least came to think, was his actual manuscript that he had typed out on his typewriter. It was a photocopy that they gave him back. So when he discovered this, because apparently some people who were bidding on the auction that he put up, he said, well, wait a second, let me take a look at this. And at least some of the pages, per the video that he posted on Facebook last night, at least some of the pages were photocopies and not the original. Now, I think he's saying that the whole thing is photocopied, but for some reason, I feel like he maybe said in his video that some of the pages were photocopied. I'm not 100% sure. But, point in fact, it's not what came off of his typewriter. And because, somebody had the job of and I'm not sure if they had like commercially available photocopiers that you could just load 200 pages into and it just riffle them off perfectly. Somebody had the job of feeding this into the photocopier. So there's a few pages that got off-centered on the vertical axis, and the top page, like the name of the god or goddess, got cut off on those. And the other factor that he pointed out was that the non-human deities are not part of that manuscript. Now, from where I'm sitting, that doesn't matter. Because if you're going to buy this, if you're going to invest in this, it's not so you can use it at your table. If you're going to invest in this, it's so you can say, I have a piece of TSR history. So that's Jim's latest update. And, let's have a quick gander here. Now, I would link you guys. I will link you guys. Anybody who let me see if I can find this. If you are looking for an historical piece of Tsr Ephemera, you absolutely should consider something like this. So there. Oh my gosh, that URL is awful. Let me see if I can shorten that a little bit, because YouTube won't let that stand. There we go. All right. And there it is. So you can check out what Jim tells about the piece. So as far as I can see, he hasn't... Let me see. Yeah, there's nothing on his page right now about him having relisted it on eBay. But if I were you, I would keep a watch. If you're really interested in an interesting curio of TSR and D&D history, I would keep a watch on this, and I would absolutely grab it, or at least bid on it. At least say, "Hey, I bid on it." So that's the latest. And when Jim decides to put it back up for auction in whatever capacity he does, I will let you guys know. I'm going to keep an eye on this. I don't normally watch or even necessarily care about Facebook things anymore. But one, Jim is an acquaintance. I won't be so bold as to say Jim is my friend, despite Facebook giving that appellation to anyone that you connect with. Just because I don't want to. I don't want to presume, But two, sorry, I'm watching my cat try to push stuff off my table. I lost my train of thought. I was talking about why I should do that. But, it's it's just a really cool piece of history. So maybe think of getting that. Maybe think of picking that up. Hello, Simuli. I see you there. Good to see you. Okay. So here's a bit of information. This is kind of some local information, but it makes me very happy and pleased to talk about. My good friends over at Gods and Monsters, comics and games and science fiction, and the home of Vault 5421, one of the bitchinest, rockinest bars in Orlando. They are celebrating their anniversary this weekend. It is their 4th anniversary at the new location, but I think it's like their 6th anniversary overall. Let me take a quick gander. At that event. So if you are in the Orlando area, or you are going to be in the Orlando area, you should go check them out. It is the best store. So 5 years running now. They have got their anniversary. It's this weekend. It's tomorrow. If you're going to be in the Orlando area, go check them out. You'll have a blast. They'll have all kinds of interesting things, and you should definitely go out there and go see them and say hi to Todd and Anna, who are a couple of the most rockingest people in the world. They are genuinely nice folks, and Gods and Monsters is a fantastic comic and game store. Now, normally I ride their coattails and I ask them, hey, can I run a D&D game? As we are kind of just coming out of the shadow of Andromeda strain, I'm not really sure how much close contact people would want to have. So I won't be doing an event out there this year. Next year, hell yes, if they'll have me. And Free RPG Day is coming, and I'll definitely do a whole big event for Free RPG Day at Gods and Monsters. I might even stream that. So some of you guys who watch me on the live stream and so on, and don't know me personally, but hear me talk about Gods and Monsters, I may take all my kit down there and do a big day-long gaming event if they'll have me come down there. So check them out. Check them out on the web, because you can shop online. If you don't have an FLGS, don't buy from Amazon. Don't buy from Walmart. Don't buy from Target. Buy from Gods and Monsters if you don't have a local comic store. Miniature painting supplies, miniatures, gaming stuff, new and old. That's right, Todd gets old gaming stuff in from time to time and gets some real rarities. Pardon me a second. I just need to lean forward here. Yeah, they and comics and fan stuff, you know. You want an Iron Man cloisonne pin? I'm sure they have one. You want the full run of Elite of Battle Angel? They've got the trade paperbacks. You want to go in and knock down a couple of beers and listen to some great music and play some classic SNES games or arcade games? Guess what? They got the Vault 5421 in the back. And you can go in there and sit and enjoy a drink and have a swell time with some swell people. So definitely check out Gods and Monsters. Oh yeah, Simile. I was going to mention that, but you've been reading ahead. Robert E. Howard passed away on this day in 1936. So, you know, he's missed and his work is missed, and it's a shame that his legacy was left in such a state that Elsprague de Camp and others, you know, kind of scattered it to the four winds. But we focus on the positive things, the things that he did bring us, rather than the things that have gotten torn down. It is a great place, similarly, and I keep trying to get Todd and Anna, or Todd or Anna, to come on the live stream and have them talk about it, but they've got a business to run. They're super busy. So, you know, we do what we can. But speaking of guests, and this is a very cool thing, this makes me excited. I'm excited about next week and the week after. I've got 2 guests coming up. One is confirmed for next Friday, is a longtime friend of mine. And by long time, I mean I've known this guy longer than I haven't. Mr. Kevin Wood will be joining us. Now, you won't find Kevin's name on RPG products or anything like that, but Kevin is hands down one of the best game masters I have ever played with. Kevin is the master of improvisation. I mean, you know, he's one of those guys that, like, if you and a bunch of your buddies and him got washed up on a desert island and, like, okay, we've used our satellite phone or fired off our flares and rescue will be here in 2 days. What do you want to do while we're waiting for the boat? Kevin would say, I'll run a champions game for you guys. Mock up some dice, and he would just be able to just boom. And suddenly you'd be living inside this highly detailed Marvel Comics scenario. And, you know, it just... You know, if you were driving across country in a snowstorm and had to go, like, super slow, and you knew it was going to be a bunch of hours, Kevin could sit there and spool off a Space Master game, or break out the index card RPG and run a one-off fantasy game. He's just that good of a game master, and I've known Kevin for a long time, and he is the guy who taught me that over preparation is preparing too much. And I know that sounds kind of silly, like, well, obviously, but trust me, I really learned the lesson from him. And I'm happy to say I was able to help him a little bit with some prep. So, Kevin will be here. You guys will meet Kevin. And Kevin will also be starting his own YouTube channel, much shorter videos and not live like mine. But he's going to be starting his own RPG and gaming YouTube channel. And we're going to cheer him on, and we're going to convince him to do that because that's an awesome thing to do. So Kevin will be here next Friday at 12:30, and I'm really looking forward to it. Now, on other subjects, other guest subjects, rather. Sorry, I got distracted. Paul said, he'd be like the professor, but instead of turning coconuts into a ham radio, he turns everything into dice and props. Yes. Okay, I think the satellite's going to be overhead. Where's our sat radio? And Kevin is like assembled post-apocalypse terrain out of it, you know. It's like he's mashed all the solenoids into miniatures and used the power distribution blocks. He's painted pips on them to use as dice, and you're like, this is horrible, but hey, good game, right? But yeah, that's Kevin. Also, there is something, and I don't want to give away too much, but there's something that has been of interest of mine for many, 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 many years. And that is the open gaming license. I have many legal questions about the Open Gaming License. And you might say to me, Bill, it's right there in black and white. Just read the Open Gaming License. Reading the Open Gaming License to determine whether or not the Open Gaming License is sound is a bit like a health inspector going into a restaurant and standing in the lobby, in the waiting area, and saying, hey, everything okay in here? Nothing dirty in the kitchen? Okay. You know, taking the word of the maitre d' and leaving. You got to inspect that shit. And there's a lot of thoughts I've had. So either next week or the week after. I'm leaning towards the week after, but I'm gonna wait until I hear from our guest whether or not it's going to be then. But attorney Tai Beard will make another appearance, make another guest appearance on the live stream. And I'm going to ask Tai a lot of questions about the Open Gaming License. And the chief question that I have is, because I think the answer is no, do you have to have the Open Gaming License to publish a D&D compatible fantasy game or module? I think the answer is no, and my argument, it's going to surprise you. It's going to surprise you. But we're going to talk about that when we have Tai Beard on. Now, if you don't know Tai, and we'll talk about this when I get Tai on the show. Tai is not just an attorney; he's also a gamer. He has played lots of D&D. He has written a war game called A Fistful of Toes. Now, that's not toes like the phalanges on the end of your feet. It's tube-launched, optically tracked, wire-controlled, which refers to the type of guided anti-tank missile that the U.S. military uses very heavily. But the TOW missile, TOW, he has A Fistful of Toes is the war game that he wrote. So Tai knows gaming, and Tai knows the law. So once I get a confirmation on what Tai's availability is going to be, we're gonna drag some stuff together, because I know diddly over squat about the law, but I know a hell of a lot about gaming, and I know a hell of a lot about some of the legal stuff that's come up with gaming. Like, here's a little bit of interesting history. Again, I don't want to give away too much, but here's a little bit of interesting history. Back in the 1990s, it was either the late 1980s or early 1990s, TSR sued Mayfair. Now, Mayfair made supplements for Dungeons and Dragons called Roll Aids. They sued Mayfair on the grounds that Mayfair violated their trademark, that TSR trademarked and copyrighted the role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm going to find out, I'm going to dig into it more. I want to have the actual judges ruling in front of me, and I'm going to read this, and I don't want to come off like a buffoon more than I usually do, but particularly in front of Tai. The judge in that case ruled you cannot copyright a game. You can copyright the presentation of a game's rules, but you cannot copyright the mechanics. Armed with that and some other stuff, I am going to make the case, and I want Tai to either confirm this or shoot this down, that you don't need the open gaming license in your products. So watch for that. Watch for that. Paul says, Ty's a cool cat. I'd pick his brain about war games. Love it when he shows up on Ricada streams. Yes. Yes. And Paul, I'll tell you what, I will put up this weekend. I will start putting up the guest streams, like the stuff that I did on when I was strictly on Facebook. The majority of it is just very meh, because it started out with me just talking about stuff. But my guest appearances that I had on Facebook were really, really neat. I've had Jim Ward on 3 times. I've had Tracy Lash on 3 or 4 times. And Tracy's just a good friend in general. Rob Schwalb, Darlene, and you know Darlene's work for the Fantastic World of Greyhawk map. I've had Alan Hammock has guested on, of course, Paul Stormberg many times, and my buddy Nick Cardarelli, who runs Raised on D&D, which is an insanely popular podcast. Nick has been on a couple of times. And I want to have them all back again someday. But Ty, I've had Ty on twice. The live streams with Ty are really long because he and I like geeked out for the longest time. In talking about A Fistful of Toes and about D&D and about stuff. So like my Thai streams are like almost 4 and almost 3 hours each respectively. So picture a Nick Ricada late night stream, but me and Ty instead of me and Nick. So you know what? I'm going to tell you guys a funny story about Ty. So I knew Ty from Nick Ricada streams initially, because Ty is working on the case for a voice actor who's been wrongly accused of sexual harassment, and Vic Menana, and I'm sure you guys know all about that. If not, the details are he was run out. He was like 30, almost 40-year veteran of voice acting, hugely popular in the community. And one YouTuber, one Twitter user, or what's that fucking thing, Tumblr user, said, "Hey, Vic Menana is anti-LGBTQ because I took him this drawing to sign and he wouldn't." Now, the drawing was apparently a character that he voiced in flagrante delicto with another male character. Vic is a Christian, first and foremost. Secondly, on an individual business level and on a corporate level, a lot of actors and actresses or other production people are barred from signing fan art like that, regardless of their personal feelings, because it can be seen as an endorsement. There went my other light. It can be seen as an endorsement of something that the parent company might not like. So after he did this, mysteriously, there are all these anon statements from people in his business who are like, oh yeah, Vic Menana is an abuser. And he got ran out of his job at, I think it's Funimation, was it the voice acting studio here in the States, by a bunch of people who then did a full court press on social media saying, Yes, Nick is a serial near rapist and, a sex pest, and we've known about this for decades. Thank God somebody finally had the courage to come forward. So he lost most of his career. And a whisper campaign was started against him at conventions, which is tortious interference. Like if Paul starts up a gaming company and I don't like Paul, and I go to Gods and Monsters and I say, hey, I know you guys are getting ready to buy like 30 of Paul's gaming books because you think they're going to sell like hotcakes. He's a toxic person. You shouldn't do that. And it gets back to Paul because they canceled their contract and they say, yeah, Bill Sylvie told us you were not a good person, Paul. Paul can sue me for interfering with a contract. That's what they did to Vic. They went around to these conventions. What this has to do with Tai Beard. Tai, because all this is going on in Texas, Funimation is in Texas, Vic retained Tai's services, and Tai's been fighting the good fight. And I was watching this on Nick Rekieta's live streams. Nick is a lawyer out of Minnesota who is very in touch with pop culture and does these multi-hour live streams. Like, they start at 11 o'clock his time, but sometimes it's 12 o'clock, which means they start at 1 o'clock. And if he has a really hot hand that night, he'll go on till almost 5 o'clock in the morning my time. Or he has in the past. They've gotten shorter lately in that they stop around 2:30 or 3 o'clock, but they're still very long. Well, once Tai was on board, Nick started having Tai on as a guest, and I was like, Tai Beard, where do I know Tai Beard from? And lo and behold, it's the same Tai Beard who wrote A Fistful of Toes, and I thought, well, that's pretty cool. Now, Tai also represented Frog God Games in a brouhaha that blew up with a bunch of people trying to basically drag Frog God Games on social media and interfere with their business and so on because of similar circumstances that were going on with Vic. So Tai got involved, and Tai started exuding his God hand, using his God hand there, sending out letters and so on and etc. Let me tell you a little something about me. I am terrified of the legal system. If I get a ticket, I have a panic attack. Like, the officer leaves and I'm like, and I curl up into a fetal position on the front seat and have a full-on panic attack. It has nothing to do with the police officer. It's the legal system. I'm 51 years old, and I am reduced to the mentality of a 3-year-old when the law gets involved in my life. Privately or publicly, I see something come from an attorney, and it's like you just put a rod of ice from my mouth to my anus. It just freaks me the fuck out. So, while all this nonsense was going on with Frog God, I made some educated guesses about what was going to happen, and I posted on the on a web forum. What I did not know, there were two facts that I was not aware of. The first of all was with my guesses. I said, I think A is right, but I'm gonna say B because I don't want to come off like I'm speaking from a position of authority. So I'm gonna say B, even though I know it's A. Even though I feel 99% it's A. I'm gonna shoot over that person's head. Well, as it happens, my assumptions were correct. my incorrect assumptions. And so I eloquently stated some things in a way that I thought was incorrect and were factually wrong, just to hold an opinion on something, and they turned out to be right. Now, very wisely, Tai's law firm was watching social media, gaming forums, for information about this case. And so here's my bullshit post, or posts, whatever they were, and they get filtered back to the man himself, who goes back to Frog God and is like, who is this the Dungeon Delver person? And a buddy of mine, Matt Finch, is one of the honchos over at Frog God, and he just starts laughing, and he said, no, it's cool, it's Bill Sylvie, he's fine, he's trust me, he's not trying to insert himself into this, he's just shit posting. And they laugh it off, and that's fine. I find out about this later when I'm talking to Matt on the phone about the publication of The Lost Crypt. And Matt says to me, yeah, you know, I almost asked Tai to go on one of Nick's streams and say, oh, by the way, Bill Sylvie, a.k.a. the Dungeon Delver, will be in touch. And the significance of that is double. It's not just that Tai would have said, we'll be in touch. But up to that date, Tai had sent out one tweet, because one of the people involved in this whole brouhaha had posted a bunch of shit and added his law firm on Twitter. A bunch of litigious, actionable shit. And Tai's response was, we will be in touch. Brothers and sisters, let me tell you something. If Tai had gone on to Nick's stream and said, just stone cold, Bill Sylvie, aka the Dungeon Delver, will be in touch, I would have died from fright. You wouldn't have found my body, because I would also at the same time have pooped my pants in fear with such force it would have pushed me into orbit. So that's my Tai Beard story. And when I told Tai this on my live stream on Facebook the first time, I said, this is not my first blush with you, and then just spieled him the story I told you guys. He busted a gut and said, my God, Bill, I wish I'd done that. So yeah, I would have been very, 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 very afraid. I would have jumped up from my chair, packed my duffel bag, and leaving all electronics, including my phone, behind, and a note from my wife that says, I'm running away to Belize. I'm gonna go hide from the lawyers. I mean, I would have been living the life of Warren Zevon's great Send Lawyers, Guns, and Money track. So I'm going to look up, I'm going to upload, I've been threatening to do this, but this weekend, be on the lookout. I'm going to start uploading this weekend my live streams that I have done with guests. I'm going to start doing that on Sunday, by the way, because tomorrow I'm going out to Gods and Monsters, and I'm gonna see what condition my condition is in, you know, as it were. I'm gonna see my friends for the first time in months, and I'm gonna have a good old time. See Todd and Anna. But something else I had wanted to look up. Oh, I have a massage. Pardon me, a mo. Let me see. Let me look up this info here. Let's find out. October 16th, 2021, free RPG day. So that's not going to be until this autumn. But when free RPG day happens, I am going to I am going to go down to Gods and Monsters, and I'm going to do fun stuff for free RPG day. So let's look at comments. Yeah, Tai is a very cool cat. Fans and fandom have ruined much, sadly. There was a time when popular culture was a reflection of culture. Now it's taken the place of actual culture. You're right. You're right. And it's tourists and dilettantes and a lack of gatekeeping our hobbies that have allowed this to happen. You know, people throw around the term gatekeeper like it's a bad word, but and let me clarify, let me define gatekeeping. You should absolutely gatekeep your hobbies. And your gatekeeping should be just like this. The prescription for proper gatekeeping is this. The person who shows an interest in your thing, for me, it's tabletop role playing. If they come over and they sit down and they say, I want to play a game, say back to them, okay, let's play. Leave all your baggage at the door. All right? We're playing Dungeons and Dragons. Orcs and drow elves and mind flayers and kobolds and hobgoblins and bugbears and red dragons and devils and demons are evil. All of them are evil. Put aside any real-world conceived notions and sit down and play. And then play D&D. Or superheroes. Or space science fiction. Or a kids on bikes game like Tales from the Loop. Or Twilight 2000. Or Gamma World. Or Metamorphosis Alpha. But just tell them to leave the world at the door. I'm not here. I'm not doing what I do. I'm not playing what I play. I'm not engaging in what I love to challenge my world views. I don't want to do that. That has no interest to me. I'm there to have a good time, a relaxing time. I watch a Marvel movie to see sky beams and hear Robert Downey Jr. get snarky and Ant-Man stumble around and be goofy and Thor be heroic and Hulk smash and Captain America be square-jawed and patriotic and Black Widow be a mysterious ninja like character and Hawkeye be the everyman that we can all aspire to be, just really good with a bow and a handgun. Oh, and Doctor Strange, just be generally awesome. You get where I'm going with this. All right? I don't need shit deconstructed, and I don't want people in my hobby whose goal is to deconstruct things. You know, I don't need purity tests given to the things that I love. I don't need things paved over to make way for a new generation. Let me tell you guys something. For those of you who may only know Ultron through the Avengers movies, and it's fine if that's the case. Way back when, before Marvel Comics became Marvel Comics, one of the comics that was being published was called The Human Torch. The Human Torch was an android. The Human Torch was invented by a guy named Henry Pym. As time went on, and the Fantastic Four was published, Hank Pym, in the process of becoming Ant-Man, the Pym particles and all that, deactivated Human Torch robot and stored him in a warehouse, in a Pym Industries warehouse somewhere. Hank then invented what he thought was a better crime-fighting robot, Ultron, and we all know how that went. Well, Ultron, having Hank's knowledge, went around, found Human Torch, said, I'm going to build a better me, an even more awesome robot that will kill all humans, and rebuilt him into Vision. Vision, having the big brain, was like, I don't want to kill all humans. I like all humans. And so became a superhero. He became an Avenger. He had his own comics. He fell in love with Wanda. That story goes all the way back to the 1960s. But I don't expect you to know that, to dive that deep into the lore. Just fucking respect it. Don't say, no, this is the Vision now. Both things can exist. Paul says, nobody wants to admit they're inexperienced in a topic and take offense when you enthusiastically try to teach them about your favorite hobby. I'm a welcoming guy, but these people gotta go. Yep, that's just the truth. I don't expect you to go out and get the entire lore of the Vision. But if I tell you about it, don't say that it and 50 years of history have got to go because this is the way it is now. That the new Vision has right think and correct opinions in current year. Don't dump 50 years of history. So, in gatekeeping, don't demand somebody know these things. But do tell them about them. I mean, to me, the Vision's origin in Marvel Comics is way more fascinating. I mean, the fact that he was the first Human Torch. And, his reaction on seeing Johnny Storm must have been quite amusing. That's the kind of gatekeeping we gotta have. So that's what I'm talking about, guys. When I say gatekeeping, I don't mean like people who say, well, that's a girl and I don't want girls at my table, or you've never played AD&D before, you can't game with us. That's stupid and wrong. No, I'm talking about keeping obviously malign influences out of your hobby. And you can see them coming from 100 miles away, guys. You really can. Keep the obviously malign influences out of your hobby. Seminole says, you cannot cooperate with a movement mentality, fanatical religion that has destroying all differing opinions or values as its base value. That is when you have to pull out the stops and fight. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And, I mean, to go back to that issue that blew up with, the usual suspects, one of the most malign people in gaming, any kind of gaming. A lot of you folks might say, oh, it's Zoe Quinn, it's Anita Sarkeesian. No, it's a woman named Jessica Price. She has constantly, metaphorically speaking, in my opinion, shit on fans. She was I don't know, fucking story writer or story coordinator or lore coordinator for Guild Wars. And she made a bunch of comments, and a fan, a super fan, whose knowledge of the lore was enough that the company that made Guild Wars was like, yeah, he's technically a civilian, but this guy knows a lot about, things that he says and writes. We'll slip those into the lore for Guild Wars. He was that big of a fan. And she made some, now I don't know Guild Wars, I just had this explained to me, made some blatantly incorrect comments about some of the Guild Wars lore. That was what Price did. And this fan said, well, I think it's, per canon, it's this. And she fucking freaked out and sicked her Twitter mob on this guy and dragged this guy. And she went in at him so hard that the company that owns Guild Wars, they kicked her to the curb. Well, she was pulling the same shit when she was at Paizo. I mean, think about that. Paizo wasn't woke enough for her. So she's in there slashing at fans, metaphorically. And she gets kicked to the curb. And she goes over to Guild Wars and gets kicked to the curb. Well, she's now washed up on the short Wizards of the Coast. And some of her statements about, how she was going to handle the lore of Ravenloft, I'm just like, how could you have hired this bitch? But it's their decision to make, and that's just my opinion. Guys, that's just my opinion. So, this is what happens, if you don't gatekeep. This is what happens. Someone who hates you and your participation in the thing you enjoy, and their goal is to drive you out, to hollow it out. It's like that circle you guys have seen. I create a thing, I enjoy the thing. The next step of the circle, the next turn is, could you be a little more inclusive with that? Sure, fine. Third step is, well, you don't fit in with us anymore. We need to silence your voice. Third step is, well, if you don't like it, you can just leave and go create your own thing. And then we're back around to the first thing. We're right back around. I've created a thing that I enjoy. I was told to go away and create a thing that I enjoy. And then as we near back around to 2, it's, you can't be exclusionary. You can't keep people out. You have to let us in. And it goes on and on and on and on. And the cycle never ends. And the people who invade your hobbies, they don't support them. All they do is go in, get positions of authority, fire the fans, and then the hobby is hollowed out and dead because those people don't spend money on the things that they invade. All right? You don't see locusts swoop into a wheat field, and while they're eating all the wheat, they're making little houses out of the stalks, or they're using the stalks to like, oh, we're going to dam a river, a creek nearby and irrigate your stream for you, farmer. They don't produce anything. They just consume, and then they move on, and you're left with nothing. And that's why we have to gatekeep. Paul says, that's why you grognards need to keep teaching newcomers about the way things were. We're back to oral history around a bonfire. The mainstream is all against lore. And that is largely what I do here. When I talk about D&D, look, you can still buy 3rd edition from Amazon, and 4th edition, and 5th edition. And Pathfinder 1 and 2. All right? All of that stuff is readily available. You don't need me to tell you about that. But if I can spark someone's interest in a role-playing game, it's going to be original D&D, and it's going to be AD&D. And that's why I come on this stream, and that's why I do what I do. I talk about the things that I love when it comes to tabletop gamings, which are OD&D and AD&D. And there are other games, surely. There are other games. But that's the stuff that I really enjoy over all others. So I do that, Paul. I do that. But on to positive things. To talk about positive things a little bit. I on Monday I have it right now, but Monday we're going to talk about something. We're going to do an RPG Antiques Roadshow on FOSS's first edition of Star Trek the role-playing game. I happen to have a beautiful, intact Star Trek the role-playing game box set. It's missing its 2 Starfield maps. Unfortunately, they're gone. But otherwise, like the back of the box says it comes with 225 counters. And there's like 222 counters or 220 counters in there. So as old as it is, it goes back to like 1980, possibly earlier. The previous owner kept all but just a few of the counters. So we're going to dive into that. We're going to take a look at the FOSSA Star Trek the RPG. Now, I have played a little bit, just 1 or 2 sessions of the Star Trek RPG, but it was after the box set. FOSSA still had the license. And they produced some damn interesting stuff, and FOSSA had a lot of latitude, and they created a lot of lore, which unfortunately later TV shows and then films completely did away with. And one of the coolest that I have ever heard, this was generated in FOSSA's Klingons sourcebook. Okay, so you go back to the original Star Trek series, which is my favorite. Hands down, it's my favorite. You know how on the original show, Klingons were just dark-skinned and they kind of had the perked-up eyebrows and so on and etc. Nobody was forehead of the week, right? So this is... And then the next time we see the Klingons, like, if you watch Star Trek and read the novels back in the 60s and into the 70s, the next time you see a Klingon, they've got the big ridged foreheads. It's Mark Leonard playing the Klingon admiral in Star Trek the Motion Picture when V'ger digitizes the Klingon fleet and stores it in memory, which, of course, kills everyone. He's got the ridged forehead and everything, and they look a bit like TNG Klingons. Here's why that is the way that is, and this is a bit of lore that FOSSA created and is my headcanon, but I don't. Yeah, I'll get to it in a minute. Well, I'll get to other aspects of it in a minute. I'm just gonna wrap up with this, but I'll tell you a little bit about it. So FOSSA's lore was this: by the time humans encounter Klingons in the original Star Trek series, they've had their star empire for hundreds of years, and they have conquered planet after planet after planet after planet. And like the Romans, they've had slave legions. Well, the Klingons had gotten decadent and had interbred with a lot of their slave legions. And they would say, well, why should purebred Klingons go die in pacifying these worlds? We'll send an army of, like 1 Klingon general and an army of cannon fodder slaves. Like 10,000 would go out and 100 would come back. Well, the 100 that came back were hardcore. which suited the Klingons just fine. So they might do this 3 or 4 times, and then they'd form a, like, a division's worth of these survivors. And they would slowly but surely create these really, 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 really incredibly skilled and deadly half Klingon and quarter Klingon warriors. And it got to the point where they basically stepped up and said, you know what? You guys aren't worth being Klingons anymore. We're the real Klingons. And usurped the throne. Well, that Klingon military was enough to almost conquer the Klingons. But the Klingons said a non-Klingon is never going to sit on that throne. And they proceeded to massacre the half-caste, the slave armies. Kind of a Spartacus uprising sort of thing. And the smooth-headed Klingon who had seized power from the Empire, he and his royal guard, they massacred thousands of Klingons, and there were just tens of them. And when they got it down to just a dozen of these guards, slaughtering wave after wave of fanatical Klingons, I imagine they were using, phasers, so it wasn't piles of bodies, but it may have been. They may have been down to swords and disruptors that, just mash your insides up, don't vaporize you. Dude nailed his hand to the Klingon throne. So even after they killed him, they couldn't just throw him off. Even in death, he kept his hand on the throne. But that was the end of it. The Klingons went on a pogrom, and there were no more half-caste Klingons. So by the time between I think they actually have the calendar years go between the end of Star Trek series and Star Trek the Motion Picture. So that was 69 to 78. In that period of time, the Klingons purged all impure Klingons from the Empire. So that's why old Star Trek, smooth, kind of Klingon looking, new Star Trek, full horseshoe crab, forehead of the weak monsters, and dark skinned. There's never been a really super accurate explanation of why this is on the TV shows. I take the Fossa story as absolute canon. The closest they ever got was a tongue-in-cheek comment called Trials and Tribulations, when on DS9, this is one of the only episodes of DS9 I ever watched, the time police showed up and were like, yeah, there's a time traveler causing problems in the time stream, and he's at this location in this time, and we need you to go back and correct it. And Sisko's like, well, where is it? Well, it's here and here, and he's going to delay the Enterprise under Captain Kirk. And Sisko's just stars in his eyes because Kirk is his favorite. And I think it was the only time they ever showed actual respect to the original series on any of the later shows. You had Picard moralizing at Kirk for Kirk not wanting to get involved after he had been absorbed into the cosmic string. Everybody treating Scotty like he had Alzheimer's in the episode where they rescued him from the surface of a Dyson sphere. That left-handed insult from Kate Mulgrew and V'ger when she makes a comment about, I wouldn't have wanted to have served with them, but I'm glad I got to see them, talking about Sulu taking the Excelsior to help rescue the Enterprise and the Kittimer Peace Conference. Yeah, Cisco going back and them doing it like a digital insert of them in the Trouble with Tribbles was the best. But Cisco and Worf and one other character are all sitting in the bar on Starbase K3 or wherever it was, and one of the characters looks over at these Klingons who are starting shit with the Enterprise's crew and says, "That's a Klingon?" And Worf gets very stuffy and says, "We don't like to talk about it." So that's it. So we're going to look at FOSSA Star Trek next Monday, and we're going to have a final time reminiscing with that game. So, yeah, be here. It'll be a lot of fun. Cerulean says, yes, definitely. I'm lucky that I enjoy history because I get to watch Delver streams. Well, thank you. Thank you, Cerulean. I appreciate it. I appreciate everyone who watches and enjoys my live streams. I really do. Whether you're on Facebook or whether you're on YouTube or you come in and you watch them later, I really do. I really do appreciate it, and I'm going to show my appreciation back to you guys, just as promised. Still sitting at 663 subscribers. Guys, get your friends to come over and watch. If they're gamers, if they're in a nerd culture, if they like mini painting, whatever, come on over and watch the live streams. Like, subscribe, and click the bell. 1,000 subscribers, and we're doing that mini-con. I'm going to do that mini-con for you guys. All right? Kyle will run some games. I'll run some games. We'll set it all up through Discord. We will do a virtual mini convention, and we'll have a gas. It'll be so much fun. But I want to do it when we hit 1,000 subscribers. So tell folks to subscribe. Help get the channel there. And we will we'll do that whenever it happens. If it happens tomorrow, then I'll plan it and we'll do it in the weeks following. If it happens this fall, then we'll plan it and we'll do it in the weeks following. But it will happen. And maybe I'll get some swag together. Maybe we'll have a little contest. Who knows? The sky's the limit. But please, please, if you haven't already, click like, click subscribe, click the bell. It helps me. It helps the channel. I really want to grow the channel so I can do more stuff like this. So I can get some lights that won't just shut off at random. But yeah, please do. Please do. So that's what we're going to do on Monday. I'm going over to Gods and Monsters tomorrow. I don't know about you guys, but maybe I'll do a little streaming from there. Maybe, possibly. I won't guarantee anything. But you guys have an absolutely wonderful weekend regardless. I will see you all on Monday when we talk about Trek. Hopefully I'll have more information about when Tai is going to be on. Next Friday, Kevin Wood is going to be here. I will update you guys as soon as I know more about Jim Ward's Deities and Demigods manuscript auction. You should definitely keep an eye on that. It might be affordable for mortals now, but we'll see. So thank you, everyone. Thank you as always. I love each and every one of you, and I appreciate you being here. Have a swell weekend, and I will see you all next week. Oh, before I forget, yes, next week Kyle is returning for Wasteful Wednesdays. My co-host is coming back, and I'm looking forward to it.